Yeah, so I think obviously right now the main source of demand for Bitcoin, I think, is very evident that it's store of value, right? So when you talk about
Mhm.
where do we see the value proposition of Bitcoin right now versus where we see it in the future? Well, the very clear value proposition of right now of Bitcoin is store of value. And
Mhm.
the why is that a solution? Why is that a value proposition? What's the problem that this solves? And the problem is really the abuse of governments to their ability to print and issue debt and create inflation. And you know, a
Mhm.
lot of people get mad when or triggered when they hear that. But I do have to say, like the fiat currency system could be handled in such a way that it was actually deflationary, right? Like
Mhm.
if we didn't issue a whole bunch of credit and debt, then the dollar would actually be deflationary. So it's not necessarily that the system itself is like broken or stupid or doesn't make sense. It's just that
Mhm.
human variable, that same human variable that messed up the equation in Rome and in Greece and in Venezuela and Weimar Germany and in Argentina over
Mhm.
it never changes. The nature of humanity is not going to change, and because that human element is involved in the equation, what we're seeing is here we are yet again in this new system where the human element is abusing the system and misusing the system. So Bitcoin is really has emerged from that abuse as a way to
Mhm.
protect your value, as a way to store your time and energy without allowing an authority to dilute the value of that time and energy. Because you know, one thing about Bitcoin, and this, believe it or not, this does tie into scalability. The store of value is the base layer value proposition. But think about gold, right? The base value proposition about gold and why gold was money for thousands of years was because you could properly store value. Why? Because it took a lot of costs to expand the supply. So it properly offered the solution of store of value across time. But what happened was they issued paper currency units that were a derivative of the gold, right? And the
Mhm.
paper was supposed to represent the gold. What did that do? That's layer 2 scalability. That's
Right.
Lightning Network, right? So if
Yeah.
Bitcoin was gold, then paper currency units being derivatives of the reserve asset gold is an L2 scaling solution. And that L2 scaling solution for gold turned it from not just a store of value, but also into a medium of exchange. So that's a very
Mhm.
exciting process that Bitcoin is going to go through right now. Not only going from magic internet money and digital gold, but really being going through that same scalability problem, right? Like we can't bring gold into the store and weigh it out. The velocity of money can't
Mhm.
increase. It's being limited by the functionality of the gold itself. Okay, let's just make paper. Okay, well, the velocity of Bitcoin can't increase because we don't want to increase the block size and give up the decentralization. And we don't want to make that trade off. And that's the right choice. Don't make that trade off. So there's going to be a L2 solution. And that L2 solution for
Mhm.
gold was the fiat currency units. But the L2 solutions for Bitcoin, we don't know what I think there's going to be. Look at the central banks in the world. Everybody always says, like, um, is there one solution? There's never one solution. There's not one company that rules the whole world. It doesn't work that way. The marketplace is so big, no one company could ever facilitate the worldwide marketplace. So there's going to be lightning. There's going to be, you know, talk about the paper derivatives. There's going to be fiat currencies of every country in the world derived and
Mhm.
supposed to be originally backed by that gold, but since moved off. So all of that is going to happen for Bitcoin, and when it evolves from the store value and also adds the additional value proposition of medium of exchange, because now the velocity of now it makes sense to buy coffee with your Bitcoin, right? Like if you're gonna send Bitcoin and it costs you $2 to send your Bitcoin, it doesn't really make sense to buy a $7 coffee and pay $2 to spend your Bitcoin.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you're a firm in Japan that buys something from the Silk Road and you have to settle with these people and you need to settle $4 billion and it costs you $2 to send $4 billion and it's secure and it's done in 10 minutes, that's a really high value proposition, right? So the store value settlement layer is a very big base layer of money that can be the collateral and the underpinning to the whole system. it's the further out development of Bitcoin, turning it into a medium of exchange with solutions like Lightning and
Mhm.
eCash and all this other stuff. All these L2 solutions, they're all valid, and the marketplace will decide which one is best and which one makes sense. I think a lot of economic incentive is going to be behind which solution eventually performs the best, but solutions will be there no matter what. There will not be just one solution. There will be
Mhm.
multiple solutions, and that's going to ultimately, what that does is that adds another base layer of demand to Bitcoin. So the base layer of demand to Bitcoin will move from just being a store of value to now also being a medium of exchange. And what's so interesting about that is if you look at what happened with the gold experiment, where finally it's like, hey, we have something, we finally solved the coincidences of want, right? Like we have a barter system that now I don't need to rely on my strawberries staying fresh or my chickens staying alive, right? Like I can store the
Yes.
value of what I produced in my money comfortably over time. And now I
Mhm.
found an easier way to move that money over time. Well, it the layer 2 solution for gold was so effective. It was so
Mhm.
good that banks and governments started creating more paper units because of the demand for those units, right? It was the demand for the money that created the credit market. So that
Mhm.
so they, the velocity of money onboarded so much demand onto the network, the gold network, that
Mhm.
banks were basically forced to move to fractional reserves because there was
Mhm.
just so much demand for the money. Because what that did was it opened up the human economy. It opened up people to be able to specialize in what they specialize. I no longer have to tend to my farm and raise my animals. I can just build sheds all day because my neighbor Johnny, he tends to the animals and I get my milk and eggs from
Mhm.
him. And that's what he wants to do. Well, I like to build sheds. So then people can start to specialize in what they do, and that accelerates the economy because it results in more production and more consumption.
Mhm.
And that's the definition of a growing, healthy economy. So I think it's really exciting for Bitcoin. A lot of people are like, oh, these layer 2 wars and solutions are scams and we're going into the big block small block debate. But no, this is a really fun process because when you look at what happened to gold after its layers 2 solution went live, demand exploded, and it really
Mhm.
created the explosion of that system was mismanaged because it came down to the human element making decisions, and they made the wrong decisions. But with Bitcoin, we have coded decisions, we have hard coded decisions that aren't going to change. And then if some of those things change or are upgraded, it's going to take a community effort in order to make that happen. So this time,
Mhm.
the human variable is better caged than it was when gold evolved from that store of value and added that base layer of demand of medium of exchange. With Bitcoin, yes, it's the store of value. It's 60% CAGR. You can't beat it. But when these L2 solutions start to become effective, and now the velocity of Bitcoin can increase and it becomes a store of value plus a medium of exchange, watch out because you're going to see the demand for the asset itself increase and against a
Right.
limited supply. And there's only one thing that can happen when that happens, and the price will go up because the
Yeah.
value
Control.
proposition is increasing. So it's amazing to be
Mhm.
watching it happen. What a time to be alive.